Hello, I'm Northwest Coast native artist David Neal, and this is the story of Chief Destroyer who came down from the sky world. In the sky world, there was a tribe called the Younger Brothers, and their leader was Chief Destroyer. His territory was in the southern part of the sky world. One day, he became restless, longed to see the territory of other tribes, so he walked until he came to lands at the north end of the sky world. There he encountered a man with brilliant garments who shone like the sun. "Hello, my friend," the shiny man said. "You are a stranger to my land. Where do you come from?" "My name is Chief Destroyer, and I come from the land far to the south. My people are known as the Younger Brothers. I am pleased to meet a chief from so far away. My name is Shining Down." "It is an honor to meet a man such as you," Chief Destroyer said. "You obviously are no ordinary man." "I welcome you to my land," Chief Shining Down said. "It is our custom to give gifts to visitors." Chief Shining Down took off his brilliant cape and his great abalone shell earrings and put them on the visitor. Then Chief Destroyer shone like the sun. "I will give you the names worthy of a chief. Your name shall be Abalone Face of the World and Abalone In House," Shining Down said. "These are high-ranking names among my people." Chief Destroyer thanked him for the generous gifts, and then he continued on his journey. Sometime later, he came to a village where a canoe had just arrived on the beach. There were 4 men in the canoe, and there was a whale hunting harpoon in the bow. The men waved when they saw them, and Chief Destroyer approached their canoe. "Hello, I am Chief Destroyer. Who are you?" "My name is Paddler," the man in the bow replied, "and my ceremonial name is Harpooner of Heaven." "I come from a tribe far to the south, and I have just arrived in your land," Chief Destroyer said. "Then you must come to my house and be my guest," Paddler said. "We have never had a visitor from the south." Paddler's crew pulled the canoe up on the beach, unloaded their gear, and they walked to the big house. Once they were seated around the fire, cooking boxes were brought out. Rocks were heated in the fire and then put in the boxes, which were half full of water. Large pieces of whale blubber were carried in on platters, carved in the shape of sea lions. The blubber was put in the boiling water, 1 piece at a time. When the blubber was ready, a large piece was put in front of Chief Destroyer. "This is wonderful," Chief Destroyer said. "We don't get whale too often in the south." "Hunting has been good lately," Paddler responded. The whale was fresh and delicious, and they ate in silence. Soon dried seaweed was served, and afterwards soap berries with honey. "You can't leave my territory without gifts," Paddler said. "I will give you 2 names, Paddler and Paddling Place." "Thank you, great chief," Chief Destroyer said. "And my harpooner's canoe shall be yours," Paddler said. "I use this canoe when I go hunting in the lower world." This caught Chief Destroyer's attention, and he said, "This canoe can travel to the world below ours? When you want to go, you paddle north to the narrow lake at the far end of our inlet. That is where the trail to the lower world begins," Paddler said. "And how do I get back?" Chief Destroyer asked. "In the lower world, there is a narrow lake that is a mirror image of our own. On that lake, you paddle towards the south, and it will return to the upper world," Paddler explained. "Your generosity is boundless. I hope that one day you will visit my land so that I may repay you," Chief Destroyer said. The next morning, Chief Destroyer told Paddler that he wanted to continue his journey. He would return for the canoe when he was ready to visit the lower world. He had been walking for some time when he saw a man of striking appearance sitting in front of a big house painted with a Cecil design. "Hello, you are new to this land," the man said. "I am from the south. My name is Chief Destroyer." "You have traveled a long way. Come to my house and we will feast," the man said. They entered the house, and woven cedar mats were put down for them. Then 4 attendants brought in wood and started a fire, and 4 attendants swept the house. Once the fire was blazing, food was served, and they feasted on sea lion blubber and cinquefoil roots with ooligan grease. Soon a young woman came in and sat beside the host. "My name is Chief Red Sky Face, and this young woman is my daughter, who will be seen by the world. The food is excellent," Chief Destroyer said, "and I thank you for your kindness." Word had spread about a visitor from the south, and as they ate, people drifted in. Soon the house was full of people. "Now we will dance for you," Chief Red Sky Face said. Watch and listen carefully, because I will give these songs and dances to you." A long drum was carried in, and singers sat on either side, and batons were passed around. They sang a feast song, which was followed by a summer dance song. As the second song began, a dancer wearing the ancestor mask of Chief Red Sky Face emerged from the sacred room at the rear of the house. The dancer went around the fire 4 times, followed by an attendant. "That song and mask are now yours to use in your feasts. You shall also bear my name, Red Sky Face. Your largesse is unmatched," Chief Destroyer said. "And when you have a daughter, you may name her Will Be Seen by All the World. She will be able to foresee the weather days in advance," Chief Red Sky Face said. "That is the power of my family, for I am known as Red Sky in the morning." "My people will be amazed to see your generous gifts," Chief Destroyer said. "Now you will see my winter dance," Chief Red Sky Face said. He went into the sacred room at the rear of the house as the singers started beating a log drum. The boom of the drum filled the house, and as they began singing, a dancer emerged, wearing this cannibal mask of the Hok of Heaven. As the dancer progressed around the fire, he uttered the fearsome cry of the cannibal, and the Hok snapped his beak several times. The effect was awe-inspiring. The Hok danced around the fire counterclockwise, with 4 attendants following and shaking ceremonial rattles. After one circuit around the fire, the Hok dancer returned to the sacred room. The fire. Chief Red Sky Face stood and addressed the spectators. "All that you have witnessed I give to our guest, Chief Destroyer. He will be the first cannibal among the people of the South, and his name shall be Very First One, as he is the first cannibal of the Southern people." Chief Destroyer smiled and nodded his head in approval. "There is one more gift," Chief Red Sky Face said, as he opened the lid of a small cedar box and took out a tiny ladder. "I know that our friend wishes to visit the lower world, so I give him this copper ladder. It is supernatural and can be used to access the world below ours." "You are truly a great host," Chief Destroyer said. "When I return home, I will tell my people of the generosity of our northern neighbors." The next day, Chief Destroyer bid farewell to his host. He decided that it was time to travel to the lower world. He returned to Chief Paddler's village and told him that he wanted to take the hunting canoe to the lower world. Chief Paddler told him to take it, and his slaves began packing provisions and loading the canoe. They went down to the beach where the canoe and 9 paddlers were waiting. Their faces were blackened with charcoal mixed with salmon eggs. It was a design used by the younger brother's tribe. Chief Destroyer went aboard, and they pushed the canoe away from the beach. 9 paddles dipped into the water, and they were away. "You paddle like true harpooners," Chief Destroyer said. "My people are known as the Harpooner of Heavens," the lead paddler replied. "It is said that our men are born with a canoe paddle in their hand." The hunting canoe traveled down the inlet and into the middle of a very long lake, where the ebb tide swept them along. After a long day's paddling, they arrived in the lower world at Cedar Place. They built a cedar big house and transformed themselves into the people of the lower world. Chief Destroyer stated that he would take the name First to Come Down. "We should take our canoe and explore the waters of this realm," First to Come Down said. They left at first light, and by midday they had arrived at a place called Repulse Passage. There was a large village with many houses on the shore. They paddled slowly towards the village to let the people know that they had come in peace. By the time they arrived at the shore, a group of people had gathered on the beach to meet them. The chief welcomed them and said that his tribe was known as the Troubled Ones. He invited First to Come Down and his crew to feast with him. They beached their canoe, and the people led them up to the chief's big house. Cedar mats were put down for them, and the chief's wife placed large bowls of dried herring with ooligan grease in front of them. The paddlers were ravenous and ate heartily. When they were finished, the chief rose to his feet and waited for silence. "We don't receive many visitors here, and I can see that you have come from far away," the chief said. "My name is First to Come Down, and we have come from the Sky World. I am Chief Copperbody. Tell me, why have you come to my territory?" "Great Chief, I have come to marry your princess, First to Come Down replied. You are clearly no ordinary man, and I would be honored for my daughter to be your wife, Chief Copperbody said. Chief Copperbody called for his daughter. When she entered, accompanied by her attendants, he told her to sit down to the right of their guest. You shall marry my daughter, and our tribes will be united, Chief Copperbody said. She's a high-born woman, so you will not leave empty-handed. Slaves entered the big house carrying precious furs, which he put down in front of the visitor. I give you these sea otter, deerskin, mink, and cedar bark blankets, Chief Copperbody said. And that is not all. You may use my name, Copperbody. Your daughter is unapproachable in her beauty, Chief First to Come Down said. And your gifts are unlike anything I have seen. Everyone will speak of your generosity and the noble bearing of your princess. The next morning, First to Come Down's crew loaded their blankets into their canoe. It was so full that there was nowhere for the paddlers to sit. When the first paddler came down to the beach, he said, Unfold, unfold, unfold. The canoe lengthened before their eyes until it was large enough for the crew, the princess, and all the gifts. When everyone was in the canoe and they were ready to leave, Chief Copperbody and his people, Chief Copperbody and his people gathered on the beach to see them off. The attendant of Chief First to Come Down stood up in the canoe and said, Our chief invites you to come feast with us at Cedar Place so that we may repay your generosity. They pushed the canoe away from the beach and they started their village home. On the way, First to Come Down boiled the masks of Chief Red Skyface and food to feed his wife's people to appear at his big house. When they arrived at Cedar Place, the attendants carried the many gifts inside. First to Come Down entered the big house and was pleased to see that 4 large cedar boxes were sitting near the fire. He opened a box to find the dance mask that Chief Red Skyface had given him. Smoked salmon was in another, dried seaweed in another, and crab apples and ooligan grease in the last box. He instructed the attendants to sweep the floor, to start the fire, and to prepare the house for guests. Before long, Chief Copperbody and his people arrived, and they were welcomed and escorted into the big house. Once everyone was seated, they feasted on smoked salmon, seaweed, and crab apples. Afterwards, the dance floor was cleared, and 4 singers began to sing a winter dance song. Chief First to Come Down showed his ancestor mask, the Hoke of Heaven mask, and then the cannibal mask. The guests had never seen such dramatic dances or impressive masks, and they were awestruck. Then the gifts were distributed. Chief Copperbody was given 4 sea otter blankets. Each of the guests was given a blanket of mink, marten, or sea otter according to their rank. The cedar boxes of provisions, which were supernatural and were never empty, were given to Chief Copperbody. When they departed, everyone was much impressed with the generosity of the people from the Sky World. Chief First to Come Down stayed in the Middle World and made it his home. His wife gave him many children, and in time there came to be a large village at Cedar Place. He gave many feasts, and his generosity and fame as a host became well known.